Welcome to the Texas News Podcast, where we dive into all things Texas and the future of independence in the great state of Texas. On today's show, I'm going to be talking with someone who's made a career out of taking on the political establishment and winning. So if you want to hear from a grassroots fighter who's challenging one of the legislature's biggest disappointments, then don't go anywhere. Well, welcome back to the Texas News Podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Miller, president of the Texas Nationalist Movement. You know, we talk a lot on this podcast about the need for principled candidates who will actually fight for Texas independence instead of just talking about it during campaign season. But finding those candidates, and more importantly, finding ones who can actually win, that's the real challenge, which is why I'm excited about today's guest. Jon Bouche is running for Texas House District 16, which covers parts of Montgomery County. And if you know anything about Texas politics, you know that Montgomery County has been ground zero for one of the most successful grassroots takeovers of a county Republican Party in recent memory. Jon was right in the middle of that fight. In fact, he helped lead it. So when the Montgomery County Republican Party was being run like a personal fiefdom by a 90-year-old chairman who had been in power for 55 years, Jon and other grassroots conservatives said enough is enough. They took on the entire establishment, including Karl Rove, John Cornyn, and Kevin Brady, and they won. Now Jon is taking that same fight to the state house level, challenging incumbent Will Metcalf. And this is not just your usual primary challenge. This is a direct confrontation with the kind of politician who talks conservative during campaign season, but votes with Democrats when it actually matters. You see, Will Metcalf was one of the 26 Republicans who walked out of the House Republican caucus to prevent David Cook from becoming Speaker. Then he turned around and voted with Democrats to install Dustin Burrows instead, after promising Jon face-to-face that he wouldn't do exactly that. And so, Jon Bouche is a Texas First pledge signer, which, you know, it means right off the bat that he's committed to giving Texans a vote on independence. So this race represents exactly the kind of opportunity we've been talking about, replacing establishment Republicans who serve special interests with grassroots conservatives who absolutely will fight for Texas sovereignty. So let's get into the conversation. Well, Jon, hey, it is, let me just go ahead and say it is great to see you again, and want to thank you for taking the time out to do the podcast with me today.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm excited about it. It's good to see you again, too.
Yeah, it's been a hot minute, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and for those of you that do not know, Jon and I have known each other for years-ish.
Yeah, well, it's been years. Probably I've been active politically for at least real active for a little over 10, kind of active for probably about 15, you know?
Yeah. I want to say that we met, if I'm going to guess, Jon, I'm going to say it's probably been about 6 or 7 years ago.
That's probably about right.
Yeah. Back when both of us had less gray hair. Well, look, Jon, you know, I'm very excited to have you on. We got a lot to talk about, whether it's the current state of Texas politics or, you know, really we're here to talk about you running for state representative, which was kind of a move that shocked a lot of people. But before we get into that, Jon, why don't you tell everyone a little bit about yourself?
Oh, sure. Well, my name is Jon Paul Bouche. So as you might guess, I wasn't born around these parts. I was born in New Orleans, but I've been in Texas for over 40 years. Graduate of Sam Houston State University. Have a BA in law enforcement and police science. I actually was doing pre-law there, Daniel. Not a lot of people know that. Been married to my wife, Janine, for 37 years. All my kids are grown and out the house. And I live here in Conroe, Texas. I'm the vice president of the Lone Star Groundwater Conservation District. Very active in local politics, served 3 terms as a vice chair of the party, volunteer of the year for the state party. Served on the rules committee and the platform committee at state convention, and chaired the subcommittee on criminal and civil justice at the state convention a few years ago. So that's the thumbnail. There's a lot more, but I won't even talk about my bands and all that stuff on here.
Hey, this is a podcast. This is not Guantanamo Bay. All right. Look, if we go there, we go there, right? But we're a lot of the listeners and viewers are probably going to they've run across you. I mean, the vast majority of our people have, and probably that would be at a Republican convention, right? At one of the state conventions. But I will tell you that you and I got to know each other, and I think a lot of people in sort of grassroots conservatism, constitutionalism, whatever, pro-liberty, whatever you want to call it, or probably came across you for the first time in the battle royale in the Montgomery County Republican Party, where, I mean, you really took on what everyone is seeing as the political establishment. You went, I mean, you charged the gates of hell with a squirt pistol.
And still am. I mean, keep in mind, the guy I'm running against for House District 16, his last name is on the street sign running through the middle of town here. So,
you have the same problem I do.
It's still a battle, and I don't really look at it like it's a battle just locally. I mean, this is a big deal. This is like me taking on the whole state here, the whole state establishment in a lot of ways, because my opponent is funded by 98% of the people outside of the county, these big PACs, the lobbyists, the lawyers, all these special interests. That's where he gets all his money from. He doesn't work for us. He works for them. Austin has their representative in House District 16, and we're trying to put our House District 16 representative in Austin.
Well, for those unfamiliar with, the entire story down there, what happened in the Montgomery County Republican Party, you guys essentially, the grassroots had a bit of a revolt down there and wrested the county party away from someone who was effectively just kind of an establishment. I think maybe cut from the same cloth as your opponent, Will Metcalf. So why don't you just kind of give everybody, they're at some point they're going to hear that it happened. So why don't you give your version of the events?
Well, what happened on that deal? I was chairman of the Lone Star Christian Chamber of Commerce. I had a lot of political people would come to my breakfast that I would host, and they would always push me, you need to get involved in politics, John. I'm like, it's not really my thing. I'm running businesses, I play music, I'm leading worship in churches. I don't have time for that. And then one day I just sort of said, okay, fine, I'll find out how I can help. And I called my precinct chair, and they never called me back. And I called them again, they didn't call me back. So I finally said, you know what, I'm just going to run against them, And so I ran against a 34-year incumbent, and I just stuck my thumb right in the eye of the establishment here when I did it. I won big in that race, and we adopted new bylaws because at the time the party was kind of on a dictatorial model. You had a man approaching 90 years old running the party. It's the longest serving chair in the history of the United States at 55 years. And, I just thought it was a bad idea to not have a bench or any talent. It was kind of like a DEI thing in some ways, Daniel. We weren't looking for the most talented people for the positions. We were looking for the people that he knew and was friends with. And so they would put people in places, committees would never meet. It was just totally dysfunctional. And so after we passed these new bylaws to make the party more modernized, unified, energized, get more people involved, he just sent out an edict and said, none of those things passed, and I'm going to do what I want. And that started a fight that went all the way up to the state party. I was the first, as far as I know, 8K complaint under the RPT rules. I wrote it, a group of us, but I'm actually author of it. A lot of people contributed to it. And presented that to the state Republican Executive Committee. And our chair got to hear and present his case to him and with his lawyers. And he lost 64-0. And we came back and he just said, I don't care what they said. I'm not beholden to the Republican Party of Texas. This is my party. I'll do what I want. And I said, well, game on. And so next election, I went to him and I said, look, I supported you in 2016. I think you've made some really bad decisions. You'll be 90 soon. I'm going to run against you for the good of the party. And he said, I'll see you at the polls. And 2 days later, he announced he wasn't running again. And I thought, well, this is good. We can start moving forward. And Daniel, you wouldn't believe it. Karl Rove shows up in Montgomery County. John Cornyn, Kevin Brady, who's already here. And man, they just went after me. Man, they called me everything but my name. And I took them on head on here in the county. Not a lot of people knew me at that time. I thought if I would get about 25,000 votes in that race, I would win. I think I ended up getting 29,000 and lost.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, but it was hard because, all the resources of the party for all those years were used against me. The headquarters was my opponent's headquarters,
Yeah.
campaign headquarters. And, you got Karl Rove down here is one of the foremost political consultants in America, helping this guy out. And they elected the husband of a political consultant who had no experience whatsoever. And it was predictably going to be a disaster, and it was. And so I'm proud to say it took us a while to rip it out root and branch. But in the last primary election that just took place, we won 94 of 113 precincts here in Montgomery County.
Incredible.
That's what you call a butt whooping.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of where we are right now. Gwen Withrow is doing an amazing job as the chair of the party. And we just have a great team here. And, God has really blessed Montgomery County. If you look at the election results, we're the reddest large county in Texas. We had the largest margin of votes contributed to the Trump presidency. And, Ted Cruz will tell you, and Ken Paxton too, that Montgomery County is why they got reelected. After they bring the vote out.
Right. Well, it's an amazing story, and look, I encourage people, if you're in one of those counties and you don't feel like you're being represented, if your party's not working for you, look at the fight in Montgomery County and see what happened there, and use it as a model to take your county back. So that being said, John, I mean, you get through that, and obviously, we've got a lot that we can talk about on the state politics level, but something must have blown you out of the bed one day and burned your butt to the point where you said, you know what, if it's to be, it's up to me. And so you announced that you're running against Will Metcalf for state representative. Tell us how that came about.
Sure. Well, during the Paxton impeachment, if you remember, Will voted for that. And I was pretty upset about that. So I had breakfast with him after that whole debacle. And I said, that was the SREC. Dale Lemon was with me. It was his assistant, Sarah. And I met with him at Honor Cafe. And I said, explain this to me. Why would you vote to impeach Ken Paxton? This case was making its way to the Texas Supreme Court. Was already in the courts. I don't understand the calculus in doing that, because by doing so, if you find he's guilty at that level, does it mess up the case as it goes forward? If he's exonerated, does it mess up the case going forward? What you did was you sidelined the Texas House, the Senate, the Lieutenant Governor, our Attorney General, and you cost us millions of dollars pursuing an impeachment that in the end was a big nothing burger. Can you explain why you did that? And he looked me right in the eye, Daniel, and he said, I had no idea this was in the courts. And I said, Will, you are either lying to me or incredibly stupid. And I don't think you're stupid. And so that was kind of the first salvo. And then after the state convention, Daniel, there was a petition going around that said, I will not support any speaker that will appoint Democrat chairs. It's a big deal if you remember at the
Oh, yeah.
convention. And conspicuously missing from the signatures of reps in Montgomery County, there was one missing. You want to guess who it was?
No, I don't even have to guess.
Yeah. Well, again, I meet him for breakfast. He always brings Sarah with him. I guess he thinks I'm going to be less mean to him if she's there. And Dale was sitting with me at the table. And I said, and Dale actually is the one brought it up. Dale said, this petition's going around, and explained it, and Will said, I don't know anything about it. And Dale said, well, as luck would have it, I have a copy of it right here for you. Handed it to him. And Will takes it and puts its face down on the table. And I said, well, don't do that. Read it. It's only a page long. I'll wait. So he reads it, and he looks at me and goes, I'm not signing this. And I said, well, is there something in there that you object to that can you tell me why you won't sign this? And he said, well, I didn't draft it, so I'm not going to sign it. So did you draft the Declaration of Independence? Let's start there. I said, you vote on thousands of pieces of legislation every legislative session that you didn't draft. So I'm not buying the excuse.
Yeah.
And he goes, John, I'm just not signing it. I said, okay, let me just tell you something. If you support a speaker that is going to appoint Democrat chairs, you're going to get primary. You understand that? And he said, I won't do that. I said, if you walk out of the room on the Republican caucus again, when they're electing a speaker, when they're nominating a speaker candidate, and you join the Democrats again, you're going to get primary. Do you understand me? And he goes, I promise you, I will not join the Democrats. I will not be part of that group that does that. I will not do it. I will support the House Republican caucus nominee. And you know the rest of the story.
I do. And, it's interesting to hear that because, you and I have some mutual friends, and two of these.
When I threw that at him and said, you're going to get primaried, I did not think it was going to be me, but go ahead.
Well, and we'll get to that here in a second. But, you and I have got some mutual friends, and two of them, I'm not going to use names, used to office really close to Will Metcalf's office there in Conroe, and their interactions with him were strikingly similar to the interaction that you describe. He's not been honest. He's not been forthright. You can't really rely on him to lead anywhere. And it just seems like he is checked out most of the time. At least that's my observation, right? Not putting words in your mouth, John. But I can say that some of the times when I'm watching the action on the floor via the video feed during the session, the times when he gets up to the mic at any point, or frankly, some of the times that I get up and go to the bathroom and refill my coffee cup, because it just, look, if I want to look at something fairly unintelligent, I'll just get on the kids channel on YouTube and watch Blue's Clues, right? I mean, that's kind of the level that we're dealing with. Again, not putting words in your mouth, John. I'm saying this, right? Lest anybody say John is being so negative. But that being said, you decided, okay, look, I told him he was getting primaried, so game on. It's time for some Bouche action. How did that come about?
Well, my wife, who, when I was living in the Woodlands area, I lived on the east side of the freeway, which was, Robinson Road's contiguous with Woodlands Parkway. So most people pegged me as a South County guy for, 17 years, 16 years, which I was. When we were getting ready to sell the house, we became empty nesters. My wife said, where do you want to move? And I said, I want to move to precinct 2 because I want to run against the commissioner there. I just got a problem with him. She goes, no, don't do that. Those people are crazy. You'll get put in jail or something. It'll be bad. Like, okay, then I'll run for, precinct 4. We'll move to precinct 4. She goes, just same thing, John. I just don't think that's a good idea. I said, then why don't you tell me where you want to move, baby? No. So she said, well, who do you know way up north, up on the north end of the county? I said, not really strong. She said, let's move there. So she was kind of telling me, just do your business. Let's get out of this whole deal. You do enough, John. It's time to dial it back. But a funny thing happened on the way to my retirement from the political world. Still engaged in the stuff in the party, Daniel. And my wife is a certified teacher, and she's ASL interpreter in the schools. And so she was noticing that these special ed kids were greatly underserved in the schools. And one night she said to me, I wish you would run for a higher office so you could help these kids. And I said, well, how do I run for a higher office if you want me out of politics? It doesn't make sense. And so we kind of put a pin in it, just left it there. And then when Will when his butt cleared that door jam and he went down the halls with the Democrats that day, this was in December, if you remember.
Yeah.
Go look when I filed my treasury report. I said, that's it. I told my wife, I said, Will Metcalf just joined the Democrats. It's going to be another session of gaslighting here. I'm so sick of this. And she goes, do you know somebody who's been run against him? I said, not right off the top of my head. And she goes, do you think you can beat him? I said, yeah, I think I can beat him. She goes, you should run. And here we are.
Wow. That's through the process of elimination, right? There it is. Well, Jon, let's kind of pull back a little bit before we get into the minutia, and really start talking about the campaign, and let's talk Texas politics in general, right? Because you had your battle with the political establishment there in Montgomery County, and as we were talking about that, you intimated that it was really symptomatic of a much larger problem. Yeah, and so from your perspective, I mean, what is the big battle that's happening right now in politics in Texas?
Well, that's a great question. If you ask people on the street right now, Daniel, who's the most powerful politician in the state of Texas? You might get an answer like the governor, lieutenant governor, but it's the Speaker of the House, because he is the only politician in Texas with the power and position to defy a president, a governor, a lieutenant governor, the Senate, and all the members of the House. He's the only one. And the reason that is because the Texas Constitution says the House shall make their own rules. And then the House rules, Article 1, Section 1, says that the Speaker of the House is fully in charge of application, enforcement, and interpretation of the rules. And then Article 2, Section 10, I believe, says that the Speaker of the House has all the authority, the sole authority to appoint administrative positions, officers, and committee chairs. So if you play that through, point of order, Mr. Speaker, I disagree with this. No, you're wrong. End of story. Well, the committee chair agreed with me. Okay, he's replaced. I'll just put somebody else in. So that's where it all starts. In 1981 or whatever, I believe, there was a clause taken out of the House rules that gave oversight to House members for appointments and rulemaking, that kind of thing. Well, that got taken out of there. And ever since then, you have a dictatorial model in the House. And so the reason people want that speaker position so bad that they're willing to sell their grandmother down the road for it is because it's just so powerful. It's unconstrained, and you can do anything from that position. So that's the key. So the first thing I think needs to happen in the Texas House is, and I've already written the chairman of the Republican Party of Texas, Abraham George, about this, and members of the SREC. Wrote him a letter. I said, here's what we need to do. We need to establish a subcommittee at the state convention under the Legislative Priorities Committee and make it in charge of reviewing and editing and revising or whatever the House rules. We'll take the input from members of the Texas House and the SREC, and we will devolve some of that power from the Speaker, and we will put forth a set of rules to present at the House Republican Caucus to be presented. And once we do that, if that 26 Republicans, which is what one of my guys was, gets up to walk out of the room, they will know at that moment that they are expelled from the Republican Caucus, censured by the Republican Party, and that the Republican Party of Texas will be mailing into each one of their House districts to tell all their constituents, your guy just betrayed you, find somebody else, we're going to work against him.
Yeah.
Because the way it's been working now, Daniel, is once the horse is out of the barn, we spend the whole legislative session complaining about it, and we can't do anything. And so the real story this legislative session was not that Dustin Burrows, along with 26 Republicans and 60-something Democrats, was able to get the speaker gavel. The real story this time was about 50 Republicans held the line and didn't sell out. That's the first time that's happened in a long time. And we need about 10 to 15 more, because there's a coward caucus in there too, I believe. There's 10 to 15 of them that will go along to save their own skin. But there's 10 to 15 really core bad news people we need to get rid of, and I'm running against one of
Yeah. Yeah. There's no doubt. I mean, Metcalf is definitely a lieutenant, whoever the speaker is, right? But let's talk about that quorum break, right? And I don't mean the one with the Democrats. I mean the one with the Republicans. Are you as shocked as I am?
There was no quorum break. Let's be clear about that. They tried to break quorum. They tried to deprive of a quorum, but they did not.
You're right. So, are you surprised that there were no repercussions from the House Republican caucus for doing what they did?
Well, again, what could they do? The speaker writes all the House rules, and then they end up punishing all these people.
Mhm.
Did you know also, Daniel, that this entity protects itself? There's members of the Texas House who say, John, I want to endorse you, but I can't because you're running against an incumbent.
Yeah.
Their rules prevent them from endorsing against incumbents.
Well, and we know that that's for the House Republican caucus, and that's kind of what I'm getting at. I'm really surprised if they did in fact have a quorum, and guys like Metcalf and those that walked out with Burrows sided with the Democrats. Surely there was enough of a quorum there that the actual House Republican caucus could have taken action. I mean, look, they took disciplinary action against Steve Toth last session, if I remember correctly, for what did he donate or endorse?
He endorsed a candidate running against an incumbent. That was him, and I think might have been Tenderholt also. There was two or three of them.
Yeah, so they were perfectly fine disciplining Toth and Tenderholt, but what about those guys that walked out? Why do you think the House Republican caucus did not take action?
Well, I think a lot of it had to do with Abraham George stepping up and Ken Paxton touring all around Texas saying, we're going to throw these guys out and, do all these things. So, but, really at the end of the day, nothing happened.
Yeah.
But again, we had about, let's visit the quorum thing again. House Republican caucus rules say that you need a majority for quorum. There's 88 members, so that would be 45 for quorum. 26 walked out. You still had 62 there whenever they had the vote. So they had more than a quorum to nominate David Cook. So they did have the quorum, and he did have the prescribed percentage of votes of that 62 to secure the nomination. Now, they've been trying to rewrite history on that ever since it happened. And I was at an event not so long ago. You had Cecil Bell, Will Metcalf, and Steve Toth there on the panel. And they went to Cecil Bell first, and somebody from the audience asked a question about the speaker race, the nomination from House Republican caucus. Cecil Bell, to his credit, said, I did not support the House Republican caucus candidate, and I had my reasons, and then babbled for 5 minutes and never told us his reasons. Then they went to Will Metcalf. Will Metcalf said, it's no big secret there was no House Republican caucus candidate nominee. And then they went to Toth, and Toth said, that's not true. There was. We nominated David Cook. We waited 3 hours for them to come back after they walked out, and instead of coming back, they held a press conference with the Democrats and said Burrows has enough votes. So the question then becomes, if it wasn't a big deal and it wasn't wrong what they did, why they keep lying about it?
Yeah. Yeah, very true. Well, look, that actually brings me to something else too, since we're talking about discipline or lack thereof. I mean, I think obviously one of the things we're dealing with is a lot of grassroots confusion, angst, anger over Rule 44 censures and removing people from office. And what is your take, John? Do you think that Rule 44 has been a bit defanged? Are we going to see people potentially removed from the ballot this go around?
Well, I hate to say it, and the Republican Party of Texas has a lot of power right now, but their power is going to continue to wane as people lose confidence in them because they don't take action on these things. And so I can tell you from my experience with my fight. So we had a wayward chair when Dickey was the chair of the party, and he took action. He did the they had the vote and the hearing, and of course the chair here just ignored him anyway, which threw us into this little local civil war, like you said, because the state party wouldn't take decisive action and say, hey, you know what? Oh, chair, you've decided you don't want to be part of the Republican Party. You've told everybody you're not part of the Republican Party, so we're going to go ahead and replace you with the chair that is going to function as part of the Republican Party, right? And then you go to Rinaldi. Love Rinaldi, but Rinaldi is a guy that he was the chair of the party, and he did exactly the right thing. He deferred all the power to the SREC, so he was just kind of bound by whatever they voted. And our SREC, they like to do this delay thing, and then point to the primary as the solution. So you never solve the problem. So Rule 44 was put in place to give some teeth to our rules to where we can actually take action and force the Republican Party even to take action. It's a two-part deal. I served on that rules committee, Daniel. On the last day of the rules committee, we went in reverse order of the rules. So we got to rule number 1 last, on the last day. And I said, for the preamble, I would like to propose that we add the following to the rules for Republican Party of Texas. The SREC shall have oversight and enforcement responsibility for these rules. And they voted me down, Daniel.
Wow.
They voted me down. I was like, are you kidding me? We just spent 3 days here making rules that nobody wants to enforce. You know how enraging that is to the grassroots and Republicans all across Texas? You guys don't want to enforce your own rules?
I know, because I hear from them all the time, John. I mean, people, as you can imagine, we have a lot of people that are Republican Party precinct chairs, that are activists, county chairs that are in the TNM, and they're jumping up and down like a major league shortstop. I mean, they're furious about it, and I think the loss of confidence is what we're experiencing in real time right now. And granted, some of the counties might have gotten a bit overzealous on their censurable, their censure resolutions and what they considered censurable offenses. But at the end of the day, you can't flunk them all. When the SREC comes out, when they're touting this new power that they have, and we're going to have teeth, and we'll be able to hold these politicians to account. And then they come out and go, well, yeah, but we're going to tighten up the criteria so much. We can only hit three people, and 2 of them aren't even running for reelection. It's a bit disheartening for the rank and file out here. But that's not the kind of person you are, right? You're one of those take action kind of guys.
Right. Well, I went out front at the beginning of this session. When they walked out, I got in front of the meeting and said, the Republican Party needs to take swift and decisive action. They can't be inconsistent in their response. They need to apply this Rule 44 thing. And I could already see it starting, Daniel. Members of the SREC saying, well, we need to, I hope these county parties write these things correct and send them in. It's like, well, we got, 254 counties across Texas. Why don't you guys provide them with some guidance to what's acceptable instead of having 254 parties guessing what you want? And of course, they shouted me down. Oh, John, you're just causing trouble. I said, I see where you're going with this. We're going to get to the end and you go, all of them are wrong. And that's kind of what happened. I mean, there was, only a couple of them, to your point, that made it through. But my guy, look, as I mentioned earlier, his name is on the sign running through the middle of town. This guy could burn down an orphanage at Christmas time here, and he's still going to have support from some of these precinct chairs. And the threshold to get a Rule 44 passed is 2/3 of the precinct chairs in your House district. There was just no way we were going to get that here.
Yeah.
But what we did get is a county party-wide censure of him for his actions walking out of the quorum, siding with Democrats. He did some other things too. I'm not sure if you're even aware of this, Daniel, but he was the House Administrative Committee chair. So the person who orchestrated this thing, where all the grassroots people showed up to get to the gallery and they said, nope, you can't come in. You need a ticket.
Yeah.
That was Will Metcalf.
Right.
And then the people that got lucky enough to get in the gallery said, hold on, stop. Before you go in, that shirt you have on that says ban Democrat chairs, you got to take that off or turn inside out. Clear violation of our First Amendment rights in the people's house. That was Will Metcalf. So he was censured by the local party for all the things he did in Austin. But we didn't even try Rule 44 because we already know. Remember I mentioned 94 out of 113 we won?
Yeah.
Probably the majority of the ones we didn't win were in HD 16.
That makes sense. Well, let's do this because I know we're running tight on time, and I want to turn to the race. I mean, look, running for state representative, been there, done that. My heart and my prayers go out to you because I know what a fight it is to run. That I had the exact same situation. I live in Phelan's district, and when that name is all over streets and buildings and everything else, I mean, it's a hard run. But that being said, you obviously have got the grassroots wind at your back. And I can tell you, out of all the challenger campaigns that I'm hearing about all over the state, two of the campaigns that I'm hearing about the most, I hear about Rhonda Ward in SD3, and I hear about yours a lot. What is with the momentum, man? What is driving the campaign?
People are just tired of the establishment games, and they know who I am. I do what I say I'm going to do the way I say I'm going to do it. And that's upset some people. And that's how my name has got out there across the state. So immediately when I jumped in the race, how donations started pouring in, which is good. If you want to donate, bouchefortexas.com, I appreciate it. So I have over 100 unique donors, and probably about the same amount of endorsements out there. And the campaign's got some real energy, and it feels good because we do have an army. I had a state rep tell me not so long ago, he goes, "Yeah, I've been in politics a long time, John. I've never seen an army like yours." And I was like, well, it's just the grassroots here. I'm just part of it. And the only reason I have an army is because I've fought shoulder to shoulder with them. They know who I am. They know my character. I didn't just show up and go, "Hey, I'm a Christian conservative and vote for me." I didn't do that. They've seen it. The nonprofits I do, the work I do at the children's hospital, the churches where I lead worship, the prison ministry I played in. They see all the stuff that I do to serve my community, and so I'm blessed that they get behind me, Daniel. So that's why I think the campaign is doing so well. And that's why I think that I'm a laser pointer and Will Metcalf is a cat, because every time I do something, he responds to it real quick. I mentioned on my page one day, I said, I posted his campaign finance report from a couple of cycles ago, and I said, "You wonder why Will Metcalf doesn't do what you want? It's because he doesn't work for you." And I posted all the, Texans for Lawsuit Reform and all the other PACs and lobbyists that contribute to him. And I said, at the time, I think there's only one person even in Montgomery County that donated his campaign, and they weren't in House District 16.
Yeah.
And so the next cycle, it seemed like he called everybody that knew his mom and dad, and they got a bunch of people to donate small amounts of money locally. So he'd at least have something on his campaign finance report locally. So he's paying attention. He knows what's going on.
Yeah, it's been interesting to watch because the establishment guys had their, during the special session over the redistricting thing, they had their, they would look like their moment of unity. Yeah, I mean, you saw the, the state party folks kind of fall in line with the speaker and Dan Patrick, and everybody was linking pinkies and singing Kumbaya. And that lasted about as long as somebody passing gas in a hurricane, right? I mean, it did not last very long at all. Do you see any of that confusion that was perhaps stirred up by that fake unity? Do you see that playing a factor in your race at all?
Well, good question. Oh, I had somebody at one of my events said, Will Metcalf sent out a mailer saying he was endorsed by Donald Trump. And I was like, that's not exactly true. Donald Trump said in a phone call, "I'm going to endorse everyone that votes for school choice." And when no formal endorsement was forthcoming from the desk of Donald Trump or from his on Truth Social or anything, one of these PACs went out, transcribed that phone call, Xerox a copy of Trump's auto pen at the bottom, And all these guys mailed it out like they were endorsed by Donald Trump. And I've talked to conservative House members, said, I'm not even touting the Trump endorsement that I have right now because these people have just made it mean nothing. But let me tell you why. Have you read the book, The Art of the Deal?
Yes.
Donald Trump's book? Okay. He talks about understanding the landscape, understanding the opposition, and what's the most important thing? Getting results. So put yourself in Donald Trump's mindset. He knows, like I said at the start of this show, you can't touch the Speaker of the House in Texas. There's nothing you can do. But what did Donald Trump know? He also knew that Burrows would stab all his constituents in the back, right? All the other House members in the back for power and recognition. So Trump comes in and says, hey, Dustin, I know I can't get rid of you. I know I'm stuck with you. I could fight with you over the next 2 years and not get my agenda through. But you know what? I really want that map passed because I need that to get my agenda pushed through nationally. What's it going to cost me? And Burrows probably said, well, endorse me. Deal. Because, Trump already knew he would sell out his own mom.
Yeah.
So there was always a deal to be had there. So when people told me, hey, Trump's talking about how great Burrows is, I'm like, well, of course he is, because he got his map. He got what he wanted. But I don't think that's going to last. And I don't think that undoes the damage that Burrows has done to himself and the people that follow him. We'll see.
Yeah, it was, you go back and you'd look at, I know we talked about this at the very beginning in some of the podcasts that we did, that, what kind of temperature would exist in the Texas House would be determined by how Dustin Burrows behaved. Was he vindictive? Was he willing to make substantive changes structurally to include more people in the decision-making process, take the speaker's thumb off the scale? And he basically went full Joe Strauss. And, it's crazy because you have a lot of people that are touting, what an effective speaker is, more conservative legislation passed. And, let's be honest, with the speakers that we have, that we've had, Phelan and then Bonin and before him, Joe Strauss, let's just be honest, that's a bit of a low watermark, right? I mean, it's a bit of a low bar to say this is the most conservative session ever. So, what is the plan here? What we need 10, 15 more good guys in the Texas House. And then,
well, Michael Quinn Sullivan is the one that actually came out and said this is the most conservative session in the last decade. And it's like being the best horse in the whole glue factory. It didn't make any sense at all when he said it, because you think about Phelan and you think about Bonin, and before that Strauss, his tenure. I'm like, what does that mean? But here, I'll give you a better stat that makes more sense to people, I think.
Yeah.
The five of the most conservative members of the Texas House, Brett Money, Steve Toth, Schatzline, Tenderholt, and maybe it might have been Mitch Little was the other one I looked at. But five of those guys, okay, the five most conservative in the Texas House, they put forth 239 bills, okay, 239 bills to push forward the legislative parties of the Republican Party. Would you like to guess how many of those passed?
I would guess probably a goose egg.
One.
Yeah.
Just one. Now imagine how much better off Texas families would have been if that conservative legislation that was put forth, formatted properly, submitted properly, everything was done properly, but it was killed because you had this group of bureaucrats that are telling you now that the best way to get conservative legislation pushed forth in the House is to allow Democrats to elect the speaker, let an Obama White House lawyer write all the rules for the House, Hugh Brady, to put a leftist in charge of marshaling the process as a parliamentarian, to give Democrats unprecedented power in chairmanship positions to stop Republican conservative priorities, and then give them $3 million to hire more leftist staff members to roam the halls and chambers of the Texas House. That's the way you get your Republican legislative priorities passed. Now, if I told you that when I was running as a rep, you would say I was insane, but that's exactly what they did. And now they're gaslighting everybody, saying this is the most conservative session ever. Well, except I imagine what we would have had if you hadn't messed over all the Republicans and stabbed everyone in the back. It would have been
Right.
a lot better. It's that same Democrat mentality. You remember when Democrats pass the Inflation Reduction Act and inflation goes up and they go, well, it would have been worse. Or
Right.
they start with the COVID stuff and we go, well, all these people are dying. Well, it would have been worse.
Yeah.
Affordable Care Act.
Look, my favorite, John, my favorite on the federal side is when they say we've reduced the deficit. It's like, yeah, you haven't paid any debt. You just lowered how much of other people's money you're going to spend. Right? It's
Yeah.
the same kind of political doublespeak. It's so ridiculous.
But
Well,
that's what you're getting with these guys right now. They're saying it would, this was so good, and they're like, well, I still imagine what it would have been like if you hadn't stabbed Republicans in the back. Go ahead.
it could have been. It could have been. Look, it could have been so much better. And John, I'll tell you this. We had the Texas Independence Referendum Act ready to go again this session. We had legislators that were, in the slot to file it. But after the speaker's race and all of that stuff shook down, we're having the conversations about filing it, and they're like, "Don't bother." All you're going to do is you're going to waste your resources backing what is effectively a dead horse, because the leadership is not going to. That nothing real and substantive is going to get out of the Texas House. We got lucky, right? The transactional gold bill got across the finish line. But it was, apart from that, a pretty weak session. Now, some people will say, well, we got men out of women's bathrooms and locker rooms, and it's like,
And it only took 8 years. It took 8 years to do.
yeah, I know, exactly. And that's the thing about it. It's not the flex that people think it is, right? When you look at a lot of these bills that suddenly make you happy, you go, well, these are big policy wins. But when it takes, nearly a decade to get those things through, and you're dealing essentially with the same cast of characters, it's not the legislation that changed, or it's not them that changed. It's whatever circumstance was necessary that forced them into a situation that they at least had to do that. And John, I don't know, did you ever see the movie Office Space?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all of these guys up there are like Peter Gibbons, right? When he's having his interview with the Bobs and like, what do you do here? And he's like, he basically describes his day, and he says, look, I'll be honest with you, I basically do just enough not to get fired. And that's kind of the mentality that these guys have.
And they protect themselves. That was the other thing that was so outrageous. Whenever they were saber rattling about what they were going to do, the Democrats, for breaking quorum, I'm like, they're not going to do anything, because Dustin Burrows needs those 60+ votes to be speaker again. He's not going to do anything to him. So people were shocked when they didn't do anything. But on the last day of the session, if you really want to have your intelligence insulted, they came in and strengthened the rules for quorum breakers. Now, those rules are dead the minute they gavel out.
All right. I know it, and you know it, but unfortunately, the rank and file primary voters don't know it, because these fools will go slap it on a mailer and send it to these people, and they'll believe it. Yeah.
Will Metcalf did that. He goes, we strengthen the rules so they won't break quorum. And people are like, you didn't enforce them last time. What? And I'm like, the rules are dead once they gabbled out. They're only good for the biennium, and the biennium's over. But it was just insulting. It made me so mad when they did that. Gosh.
Well, it's absolute insanity. And John, that's why I got to say that I'm so happy that you're running, man. I'm really excited for you. I'm excited for your campaign. And look, as we're wrapping up, why don't you go ahead and give your elevator pitch, man? Talk directly to the voters in your district, and even some of the Republicans outside that may want to support you.
Well, thank you for that. Look, all across Texas right now, Daniel, you're seeing it. People are waking up. There's an awakening. People are rallying for faith and family and freedom. And House District 16, in the reddest large county in Texas, this is not just a campaign. This is a movement. This is huge. What a time to be alive right now in America, to see this going on. And my heart does break for Charlie Kirk and his family, but look at how his influence is multiplied right now. So what we need to do in the Texas House, I touched on it earlier. I'm going there to reform the Texas House. I'm going there to make that lake between the Republican Party of Texas and the House Republican Caucus more sure, so that we can enforce Republican Party rules and Republican principles and actually get real Republicans in the House to do what they say they're going to do. And it's not just part of a stump speech. Nobody's ever had to guess where I stand and what I'm thinking. I mean, I've been consistent about all of this from day one. So hopefully I can get some people behind me here in the county. There is about a 60% turnover of new voters in House District 16 over the last 10 years or so. So there is a real opportunity here right now. And every day I see my campaign growing. I get more phone calls. I heard my name, Michael Berry, mentioned me on the radio again the other day, and immediately my phone started ringing. So I see God's work in this, and I'm ready to serve. And I'll do wherever He sends me. I'll do whatever He needs me to do, and I'm excited about the opportunity. So, BoucheForTexas.com, and give me a call. I'll even give you my cell number right here. I'm that kind of brave guy. 281-907-3989. Call me anytime.
Okay, you guys heard it. If you need to send any text messages about unpaid toll bills or any Nigerian lottery winnings, you got John. Well, John, hey buddy, thank you so much. Really do appreciate it. And obviously we'll be staying in touch throughout the campaign, but we're praying for you, buddy.
God bless you, man. Thank you for having me on.
Well, there you have it. Jon Bouche taking on the establishment in House District 16. You know, what strikes me about John's story is how it perfectly illustrates what we're up against in Texas politics. You know, you've got these establishment Republicans like Will Metcalf who will look you straight in the eye, make promises about supporting conservative and pro-Texas principles, and then turn around and do the exact opposite when they think nobody's watching. But, you know, John's story also shows what's possible when principled people are willing to get involved and fight back. The transformation of Montgomery County from a 70% Republican county to an 89% Republican county didn't happen by accident. It happened because people like Jon were willing to take on entrenched interests and do the hard work of building grassroots support. And that is exactly what we need more of if we're going to build the coalition necessary for Texas independence. We need people who understand that political change doesn't happen with strongly worded press releases or social media posts. It happens when you're willing to get in the arena and fight. The fact that Jon has over 100 unique donors and endorsements from across the state tells you something very important. People are hungry for authentic leadership. They're tired of politicians who campaign as conservatives and govern as establishment lackeys. Now, Jon's campaign website is BoucheForTexas.com. We'll flash it there on the screen and make sure it's in the show notes. And of course, if you're in House District 16, I'd encourage you to get involved. But even if you're not in his district, Jon's race represents something bigger than just one seat in the Texas legislature. It represents the kind of grassroots energy and authentic conservative leadership we need to change the direction of the state. You know, when you have establishment Republicans working with Democrats to maintain power, we have speakers who ignore their own caucus and serve special interests instead of Texas families. It's up to people like Jon to provide an alternative. And as he pointed out, this isn't just about replacing one bad legislator. This is about reforming the entire structure of the Texas House so that it actually serves the people instead of the political establishment. Now, that's going to take more than one election cycle, and it's going to take more than one candidate. But races like Jon's are where the change begins. One district at a time, one principled candidate at a time, one Texas First pledge signer at a time. Because at the end of the day, if we want legislators who will support giving Texans a vote on independence, We have to be willing to support candidates who will actually fight for that principle instead of just talking about it. So, friends, that is a wrap for the Texas News Podcast. I want to thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to like and subscribe wherever you're experiencing this podcast. If you'd like more information on the Texas Nationalist Movement, head over to tnm.me. That's tnm.me. Or you can check out the official news side of the Texas Nationalist Movement, the Texian Partisan. Go to texianpartisan.com. And, of course, always join us over on TNM Social, and let's keep the conversation going. Go to tnm.social, download the app, and get signed up today. And so now I'll leave you with the words that I leave you with every time we're together. They're not my words. They're the words of Sam Houston when he said that Texas will again lift its head and stand among the nations. I believe that time is now, and the question is, will you stand with her?